Assalamu alaikum. Surah al-Balad, chapter 90 of the Sublime Qur'an, opens with a solemn assertion that the human race is bound to undergo a life of struggle on earth as an inevitable test for which man has been created in the first place, divinely assisted for the purpose of this test by unique perceptive and communicational gifts and by intuitive distinction between right and wrong. However, the surah tells us that due to man's being characteristically extravagant, selfish, arrogant and gluttonous, that man tends with the free will he's been endowed with to neglect or misuse the intuitive guidance and the gifts that he's been divinely entrusted with. And he thus forgets about his Creator's all-seeing power over him and about the eternal afterlife. And thus, the first part of the surah ends with affirmation that in view of his choosing to waste his time on earth the way he desires, instead of using his time the way his Creator directs him to do, man is doomed to failure and the struggle for achieving ultimate success. I hereby make a solemn oath by this land, although I need not swear by this land. While you are resident on this land, vulnerable here, but are soon becoming free from blame on this very land. And by a parent and what they have begotten, we have indeed created man in toil and suffering. Does he think that no one will subdue him or can reduce his means? He says, I have squandered piles upon piles of money. Does he think that no one has seen him? Have we not given him 2 eyes and a tongue and 2 lips and bestowed upon him guidance to the 2 paths easy to recognize? However, he is not managed after all to charge headlong into the mountainous barrier. The first thing to notice about Surah al-Balad is its initial divine oath, which has an unusual form. Instead of using the typical particle of oath, wa, that we have come across with wal-layl, wal-duha, wal-shams, etc., etc., it says la uqsimu, which literally translates into I do not swear, but which in classical Arabic is an idiomatic form of swearing about something with extra emphasis. It thus gives 2 denotative meanings harmoniously merged, which my translation puts side by side with the usual orange marker of parallel denotations in between. They go, I hereby make a solemn oath by this land, although I need not swear by this land. This surah having been revealed while the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, was still in Mecca before his hijrah to Medina, commences with this solemn oath by this sacred land, meaning Mecca. It thus underscores the city's utmost sanctity, but it also adds even further sanctity to this land by the presence of the Messenger of Allah on it. وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ, swearing by the sanctity of this land as or while you, that is, O Muhammad, are hillun, present on this land. From the verb halla yahillu, which means to arrive somewhere or to be present somewhere. But notice how marked by again by my orange parallel denotation markers, this word hillun also relates to the word halal, meaning permissible or allowed. And based on this latter derivation, Qur'an exegetes have clarified that the word hillun also means that somebody or something is considered halal, meaning allowed to be dealt with freely without restrictions, which in the present context means being vulnerable to mistreatment. At the same time, exegetes have clarified the word hillun means that somebody is given permission, is free to do what they desire, which I render as being free from blame. Taking into consideration that this sentence وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ may refer both to the present and to the future. وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ now or وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ in the future. The final shape of the sub-basic rendering that I give this ayah, inclusive of all three meanings of the word hillun and of the two possible verb tenses, is while you are resident on this land, vulnerable here, with the word here marked in thin black italics as an adverbial replacement. And the third meaning indicates what is grammatically called in English a planned future, a case of planned future, but are soon becoming free from blame on this very land. After the surah's initial oaths comes the subject matter of the oaths collectively, which is a crucial statement that resourcefully employs a rhetorical technique characteristic of Qur'anic style. That is the technique of switching pronouns and grammatical persons. You see, in his initial oath, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to his all-glorious self with the singular first person pronoun. La uqsimu, I hereby make a solemn oath. But in the subject of this same oath and afterwards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to himself with the plural first person pronoun. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We have indeed created man in toil and suffering. With this meaningful switching to the use of what is called the royal we, extra exaltation is given to Allah's great wisdom in the creation of man. In the same sentence, I insert the word indeed, we have indeed created, because this statement on its own contains two emphatic tools, both combined within the word laqad. Laqad. La and qad. You see, we have qad, which is a particle that expresses the accomplishment of the verb, that it precedes. We call that at-tahqiq. And is itself used to emphasize any divine action that succeeds it. Any verb whose subject is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other emphatic tool is la, which we have come across before alone, denoting an implied oath. Another point to highlight is related to the verb يقدر in ayah number 5. أيحسب أن لن يقدر عليه أحد. The verb قدر يقدر على means both to capably subdue someone, قدر عليه, and also to tighten the financial situation or living conditions for someone, as in the common Qur'anic collocation of the opposite verbs يبسط الرزق ويقدر يبسط الرزق ويقدر. I therefore render the ayah as, does he think that no one will subdue him or can reduce his means? Next, the dual noun. Dual noun means composed of two. It's neither singular nor plural. The dual noun najdain is translated as the two paths. In وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, and we bestowed upon him guidance to the two paths, easy to recognize. They are easy to recognize because the singular noun najd means both a wide road that you can't miss and an elevated plain. Besides, they are the two paths, al-najdain, as the definite article al that is attached to the noun najdain denotes that the two paths are definite, are well known. And finally, the word aqaba, فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. This word in modern Arabic is used to describe any serious obstacle in one's way. But originally it stood for a craggy, rocky mountain that is hard to overcome, or more particularly for the summit of such a mountain, or for a dangerous path in the mountains. In the present surah, it stands as a metaphor for the extreme endeavor that man must undertake with full force as the struggle of one's life, which is already a life of struggle, remember, in order to achieve ultimate success. I render it as the mountainous barrier. The first thing to remember is that in the Qur'an as a whole, the speaker as a first person pronoun without a clear-cut referent within the text is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how we must recognize the speaker at the very outset of the present surah, declaring, La uqsimu, I hereby make a solemn oath. It's a solemn oath, especially for its having this emphatic idiomatic form. It's a divine oath by Mecca, this most sacred land. We said that the land referred to is recognized to be Mecca from the circumstantial setting of the surah's revelation. It's sabab al-nuzūl, as we say in Arabic, from the historical fact of its having been revealed in Mecca, referred to as this land, with the denotative implication of this most sacred land. Most sacred because whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by anything, it is to draw attention to the exceptional dignity of what he swears by, be that his all-majestic self, his Qur'an, or whatever else. And I next supply the second parallel denotation of this same oath, enriched by its implicature. Although I need not swear at all by this most sacred land about a matter that is so obvious, yet I do swear by this most sacred land, وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. Here is the singular male addressee, Anta, addressing the person of Allah's Messenger, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, as typically found in the Qur'an. Wa anta. Now, the wa here is absolutely not the conjunction wa, which means and, as the vast majority of Qur'an translators sadly take it to be. Rather, it is the type that we call واو الحال, which introduces an adverbial clause, جملة حال. It is equivalent to the subordinating conjunction while. So وأنت actually means especially while you, وأنت, O Muhammad, O Messenger Muhammad, are حل بهذا البلد, are resident on this land, are presently being vulnerable to assault and abuse here, but are certainly soon becoming free from blame for whatever you will do on this very land. And then comes the surah's second oath. And I swear by each and every parent of every kind and species. Because the word walidin, meaning a male parent, is an indefinite noun, walidin. So it may refer to any and to every male parent. And the same applies to wama walad, and by whatever offspring they have begotten. Next, this double oath is succeeded by the subject of the oath that is being sworn about. We, in our glory, thus swear that we have indeed created al-insan, man. The definite article al attached to the noun in this case turns it into a generic abstract noun, ismu jins, indicating the noun's all-inclusiveness of the whole race, what we call al-istighraq in Arabic. Therefore, we have indeed created man as a whole race, fi kabad. Now, fi means in, within, or inside. Hence, fi kabad is submerged in a state of kabad. Kabad, also called mukabada, that is of constant toil and suffering. With the insertion of the adjective constant there, because the phrase خَلَقَنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ is a nominal phrase, jumla ismiya, which is naturally understood to express fixedness and stability. It's a noun. Unlike a verbal phrase such as لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ يُكَابِدُ, meaning we have created man toiling and suffering, wherein a verb would naturally express change and fluidity. Right after this crucial statement about man's divinely planned toil and suffering in life, there comes an unexpected shift that depicts man extravagantly wasting money and boasting about it. This shift is introduced by the sudden rhetorical question, أَيَحْسَبُ أَن لَّن يَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ أَحَدٌ? Which on this sub-basic, near-literal level of translation, we found abruptly saying, does he think that no one will subdue him or can reduce his means? But when reading between the lines of this shift and into what follows this question, one realizes the connotation that is actually implied there, that although man is submerged in a state of constant toil and suffering, yet when tested by us with wealth and well-being, he turns presumptuously conceited. But does he really think that no one is capable of overpowering him, that no one will subdue him or can reduce his means? And the sarcastic nature of this rhetorical question adds yet more connotation to it. For he is, no doubt, helpless under our power, ever in need of our bestowal of everything. And this is succeeded by the reason why the question is asked in the first place. يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا. That man, though weak and deficient, is so arrogant. And yet he says, I have squandered piles upon piles of money. Which is followed by another rhetorical question. أيحسب أن لم يره أحد? But does he think that no one has seen him? This implies, for we are in truth all seeing of everything, and are holding him absolutely accountable for whatever he does, says, and intends. Subsequent to this, the implications of the latter question generate a third rhetorical question regarding man's full accountability. This is a question that enumerates three divine favors upon man. أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ عَيْنَيْنِ? Have we not given him عَيْنَيْن, two eyes, وَلِسَانًا وَشَفَتَيْن, and a tongue and two lips? These are man's senses for acquiring knowledge of the truth, notice. And finally, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. Now, my basic translation of these two words, هَدَيْنَاهُ and نَجْدَيْن, is roughly, and we bestowed upon him guidance to the two paths, easy to recognize, alluding to the two paths of good and of evil. I have repeatedly stressed that such a method of near literal rendering is never adequate, or at least never sufficiently adequate. And it is this kind of rendering that Qur'an translations on the whole unfortunately offer. Therefore, we need to slow down a bit so as to meditate what we have here. Many translators have chosen to render the verb هَدَيْنَاهُ as we guided him to, that is the two paths, or we guided him along the two paths. But both of these translations are objectionable, I presume. Because while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indisputably the source of guidance to everything that is good, He is in no sense the one who guides people to the path of evil, nor definitely the one who guides them along the path of evil. You see, following the path of evil is solely man's personal choice from beginning to end. And what guides man to and along the path of evil is man's own nafs, his self, as well as the devil. Alternatively, many more translators have tried to evade this misreading by choosing to render هَدَيْنَاهُ as we have shown him the two paths, even though the verb hada is a lot more specific than but to show. In fact, the verb hada, yahdi, and the noun hidayah, derived thereof, when referring to divine action, unambiguously indicate the act of the benevolent bestowal of the right guidance upon somebody. Then how to capture the right meaning of Allah saying He has bestowed upon man the right guidance, not to faith, not to the truth, but to good as well as to evil? My translation clarifies this through the insertion of the connotative meaning that is understood on the bare language level. So the sentence goes, and benevolently bestowed upon him the right guidance wherewith to distinguish between al-najdain, between the two paths, which our guidance makes easy to recognize. Thus, everybody knows that there's the path of good and the path of evil. There's right and wrong. But it is divine guidance that makes the two paths distinguishable from each other, so they become not just two paths that might be confused, but najdain, that are easy to recognize. But despite having been thus enabled by Allah to acquire knowledge of the truth and to clearly distinguish good from evil, man, especially referring to people who lack true faith, has failed to pass his test on earth. فَلَقَتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. However, he is not managed after all to fulfill what should by all means have been the sole purpose of his lifelong struggle, which is to charge headlong into the mountainous barrier and thus to clamber across it, with the insertion in maroon italics conveying what the verb iqtahama actually denotes in language, which is to charge daringly, iqtahama, daringly into a difficult or dangerous situation with both force and speed. And this image of charging into the mountainous barrier is where what I have to consider as the first part of the surah ends, to be strikingly elaborated upon right afterwards, as we're going to see in this surah's latter part, insha'Allah. I, Allah, the one and only Lord, Almighty Subjugator and Sovereign Owner of the heavens and the earth and all that is amidst or beyond them, hereby make a solemn oath by Mecca, this most sacred land, although I need not swear at all, especially not by this most sacred land about a matter that is so obvious. Yet I do swear by this most sacred land, especially while you, O Messenger Muhammad, most blessed and most honourable of all mankind, are resident on this land, adding yet more honour to it by your residence here, though you are presently being vulnerable to assault and abuse by unbelievers who live here together with you, and will surely be forced by them out of this dearest place to your noble heart, but are certainly soon after your expulsion becoming a victorious conqueror of Mecca, exceptionally, exclusively authorized by your Lord, who is the sovereign Lord of all existence, as free from blame for whatever you will do on the first hour of your conquest to unbelievers who will stand up for your fight on this very land, where no harm is ever allowed except in your unique impending case. And I swear by each and every parent of every kind and species that I have created, and by whatever offspring they have begotten, especially by the first man I created, Adam, my dutiful slave and prophet who first built the Kaaba in the sacred land of Mecca as the first house for my worship on earth, as well as by my prophets and dutiful slaves who descended from him and were associated with this holiest place on earth, Ibrahim, that's Abraham, and his eldest son Ismail, who restored the building of the Kaaba together, and you, their noblest descendant, native of Mecca. We, Allah, the one and only Lord, Creator, Nurturer and Sovereign Owner of the heavens and the earth and of all that is amidst or beyond them, in our divine oneness and our all majestic glory, thus swear to you, O Messenger Muhammad, epitome of the human race, while you are suffering all sorts of trials and hardships in our cause in this holiest of all towns, that we have indeed created man as a whole race, destined to live submerged in a state of constant toil and suffering throughout his earthly life, the transient life of thorough testing. Accordingly, if man chooses to submit himself to our guidance and our will, and to dedicate all his suffering and toil for the noble goal of gaining our pleasure, we take it upon us to ease his troubles and pains, to favour him with our guidance and protection through life, and to reward him generously in the eternal afterlife for his struggle in our cause. However, man characteristically refuses to submit himself to his creator and nurturer, and lacks true faith in the judgment and the afterlife, and he therefore typically chooses to reject our guidance and defy our will in arrogant, brash and short-sighted self-interest, living bereft of our direction and support in the face of trials, in incessant struggle for worldly advantages and aspirations. And when tested by us with wealth and well-being, he turns presumptuously conceited. But does he really think that no one is capable of overpowering him, that no one will subdue him or can reduce his means? For he is no doubt helpless under our power, ever in need of our bestowal of everything. And yet he boastfully says, I have squandered piles upon piles of money on my pleasures, luxuries and prestige, and on the support of my interests, views and ideals in the face of whatever contradicts them, and I have no money to spend on any charitable causes. But does he really think that no one has seen him, that our record-keeping angels have not marked down what he has done, or that we are unaware of every detail thereof? For we are in truth all seeing of everything, and are holding him absolutely accountable for whatever he does, says and intends. But is this struggle for sheer self-assertion and amusement on the part of man the purpose of our creating him in the first place? Or is he not aware of the test of dutifulness to us that he needs to strive hard throughout his life in order to pass? Have we not given him 2 eyes from very young age, wherewith he can see and recognize our signs in creation? And have we not next given him a tongue and 2 lips, wherewith he can speak like no other creature on earth does, so as to affirm and spread rectitude, justice and the truth? And after subsequently giving him reason, intellect and insight, have we not, through the fitrah, the natural disposition of innate virtuousness that we ingrained in him, constantly pointing him to us and urging him towards virtue, and by sending him messengers and scriptures, benevolently bestowed upon him the right guidance wherewith to distinguish between the 2 paths of good and of evil, which our guidance alone makes easy to recognize? And have we not, after thus qualifying him, provided him with the free will to take whichever of the 2 paths that he prefers in life, with full accountability? However, unless blessed with true faith, man has always chosen to dedicate his struggle on earth to the fulfillment of base desires, egoistical urges, and delusional material gains. And he has not, therefore, managed after all to charge headlong into the mountainous barrier and then to clamber across it into our eternal reward.